So, two problems. The attribution of intentionality to mysterious co-conspirators and the vagueness of their desired end. I take it these are two major problems for any discussion of a conspiracy theory. And there's a related point here, which is also the knowing that they're going to be successful, the so-called historian's fallacy. How do the conspirators know that their plan would be successful? So what actually judges the success of a particular conspiracy? Take, for example, the assassination of Julius Caesar. There's a quite obvious success criterion for the assassination of a political figure, which is the political figure actually dies. Now, what happens after that, of course, is up to the conspirators. The conspirators could have kept mum about the assassination of Julius Caesar, i.e., who was responsible, and just had masked vigilantes stab the dictator in the Senate building on the Ides of March, or they could come out and say we were the ones responsible for assassinating the dictator. And so this particular historical example of a conspiracy has a rather stringent and quite easily demarked success criterion. But things like the New World Order, the War on Terror, and related conspiracy theories that emerge from that kind of discussion, or dialectic, it's very difficult to judge how would they know they were successful. But also, more importantly, if they're being successful, why does everyone know about the conspiracies they're engaged in? Surely one of the marks of being a successful co-conspirator is actually keeping your plot secret. So when Ian Wishart decides to wax lyrical about your conspiracy in Investigate magazine, surely something is going wrong. Now, we'll probably talk about this more in the question time, so let me move on. Most of my work at the moment is looking at what I call the inference to the existence of a conspiracy. Now, an inference to the existence of a conspiracy is simply an argument which posits as an explanatory hypothesis the claim that some event came about due to a conspiracy. And it's my argument that the inference to the existence of a conspiracy very closely resembles the fallacious inference to any old explanation, or what is often called the just so fallacy. So you think about the just so stories of Rudyard Kipling, which are explanations of phenomena or event within the world, like the leopard having spots, which presents a nice story as to why the leopard has its spots. But we tend to recognise the just so stories, at least in the fiction, that these are not the actual explanations. They're just trite, convenient fictions that make it easy for people to understand. And often conspiracy theories resemble exactly that kind of move. They're explanations which are easy to grasp. Some event happened because someone intended it to occur, but they often aren't particularly plausible or likely hypotheses when you consider the rival explanations which tend to be grounded in A, better science, B, a better understanding of history, and C, a better understanding of statistics, correlation, and causation. And often when we're contrasting a conspiracy theory with a non-conspiracy theory, we come up against a conflict of authority. So conspiracy theorists, of course, present themselves as being authorities in a particular matter. So Vincent Gray of the New Zealand Climate Science Coalition puts himself forward as being an authority in climatology and also an authority as to whether anthropogenic climate change is actually occurring. And we need to be able to judge such authorities, whether they're conspiracy theorists or holders of some official view. Now, an authority is going to be simply a source of beliefs, and there are lots of different types of authorities. Depending on what relationship you're in, your elders, your parents, your bosses, your partners, they may be your authority in some particular sense. So presumably you're all old enough now that your parents are not the complete authority for everything you do. But as children, your parents really probably were the be-all and end-all of what you were allowed to do, what you were allowed to say, and to a certain extent, what you were also allowed to think or believe about things in the world. But often we grow up, and parents cease being the kind of authorities they were, unless, of course, your parent happens to be a professor of sociology or a professor of philosophy, at which point they may continue to be the relevant authority in your life. And we often move on to epistemic authorities, which are sources of justified beliefs about the world. So often our parents or our partners have beliefs about the world that they want you to also share, but they may lack the right kind of arguments to justify those beliefs. Presumably, we think that our epistemic authorities, such as academics, research scientists, and the like, are sources of justified beliefs. And part of that justification comes out of the fact that such epistemic authorities as individuals exist in communities. So people, to be successful in the academic life, have to go through the peer review process. They've got to be able to submit their work to others in their field. Essentially, there is a consensus that develops amongst epistemic peers that allows you to say that if epistemic peer X has a particular belief, which is supported by the rest of their community, then that gives us adequate justification to think that that belief is good, and then we can adopt it and use it in our own cognitive work. So we need to be able to judge when we can make legitimate appeals to authorities. And we need to be able to judge when we're dealing with legitimate epistemic authorities, and whether the particular person we're talking to or listening to, when they put forward an explanation of some phenomena or event, is an epistemic authority or just a mere authority like your parents or your partners. Because if we don't make this kind of judgment, we might be committing the fallacy of the appeal to any authority. So if we don't know how to distinguish between epistemic peers and essential normal or mere authorities, then we may end up forming beliefs upon authoritative utterances or sources which aren't actually justified in the right kind of way. And often conspiracy theorists present themselves as being authorities that they would like you to think are epistemic, but actually aren't. And the important thing to note here is that if you hold a controversial opinion, then you need to discharge the burden of proof. You need to be able to show that your controversial view is in fact good. One of the good things about being an epistemic authority is that you aren't likely to be putting forward something particularly controversial. It is likely to have support from your peer community. If you're a member of the New Zealand Climate Science Coalition, that puts forward the notion that anthropogenic climate change is in fact a UN-fostered fraud designed to bring a one-world government upon the earth and to pervert the science, you're making a controversial claim, and the burden of proof does sit upon you to actually provide evidence for that particular claim. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. Just skip over the next slides. We're going to go on to... So we need to actually make sure that people are the right kind of authority. And there are lots of examples of people who are authorities in one field who present themselves as being authorities in another. For example, Dennis Dutton, who's a philosopher, likes to put himself forward as being a bit of an expert in regard to climate change skepticism, even though he has no formal training in climatology. David Ray Griffin puts himself, who's a theologian, claims to be able to make authoritative statements about what happened on September 11th, 2001. David Irving, who's an amateur historian, claims he's able to make claims about whether the Holocaust occurred or not, and contentiously, at least within my discipline, Christopher Hitchens and also Richard Dawkins put themselves forward as being experts in the philosophy of religion, even though they had no formal training in the philosophy of religion whatsoever, and use outdated, outmoded, and quite frankly ridiculous arguments. I'm an atheist, and I find what Dawkins and Hitchens do to be a bit of a blow for the movement, truth be told. So these are people who are not the correct epistemic authorities when it comes to debates of a particular kind.